best food you ever had.
Hey y'all, I'm Tammy. The cameraman is Chris, my husband, and this is Collard Valley Cooks, specializing in old-fashioned country cooking. We're going to start out with my smothered pork chops. All of these recipes are in our Master Cook book. You're going to start with your bacon in a hot skillet, and your skillet needs to be about the size that you need it to be to cook your pork chops. So this bacon is mostly for flavor, of course. While you're cooking that bacon, we're going to season our pork chops. Now you're going to want some nice 3/4 inch to 1 inch thick pork chops. And today I chose bone in because it's Father's Day. And it's always better with a little bone in it. We're going to sit these down and pepper them and salt them, dredge them in a little bit of flour. So these aren't going to be like a super crunchy fried pork chop. They're going to be more like a seared pork chop, more like a steak. These are going to be seasoned with salt and pepper, and we're going to be using some fresh garlic and onion and our sage gravy. So you got the sage as well. So remember that, but if you want some more seasoning, go ahead and pile it on there. Now I'm going to coat this in flour, and it's not going to be a lot. So you're just going to rub it on there good. And then I'm going to turn them and repeat. Now, I am using my right hand next to the pork. My left hand is clean. I'm going to reach in, add more salt. And you want to be generous when you got a thicker pork chop than you would if you had a thin one. All right, now we're going to reach in here with our clean hand. Just spin in the salt and pepper. We're going to get us some more flour. And we're going to rub it on this side. So you make sure that when you're touching raw meat, that you don't double dip your fingers in anything. You can use one hand for coating and one hand to do the dipping in things if you want to, like I do. We're going to remove this bacon and put it on a plate over here. Now we've got these delicious pork drippings, and you want to take advantage of that because it tastes really good. Now, we're going to add a little bit of olive oil. Turn our heat up just a hair, and we're going to add our pork chops. And we're going to get them nice and brown. Our recipe tells you to make a 3/4 inch chop on medium 4 minutes on the first side. We're going to go 4.5 minutes because ours is a little thicker, but not a lot thicker. And we're going to add these chops now, and I'll set a timer. So you want to keep it on about a medium heat. That's about a medium heat. You don't want it to be real hot. You don't want to sear them. You want to cook them, okay? We're going to set that timer. All right, it's been 4.5 minutes. We're going to flip them. And remember, whatever time you use on one side, you need to use the same timing on the second side so that the center gets cooked evenly. In other words, you don't want it to get done a 1/2 inch in on one side and a 1/4 inch in on the other side. So if you make it 4.5 minutes on one side, you do it on the other side. It's great to have a meat temperature sign next to your stove. This one says if you want your pork medium, it gives you the temperature of 140 to 145. It also gives you a medium well, a well, and a ground temperature. And they make these in magnetic form as well. I think I got them under must-haves under the Shop Now tab on the website. And you can put it on the side of your refrigerator. We got 19 seconds. So I'm going to lift this one up with my handy hook. And we are going to insert this thermometer in the center near the bone. And since we're at 120 and we want to be at me and Chris want these about 155, I'm going to go ahead and flip them again. And this temperature's been really good on medium this whole time. It's doing really well. We're going to set the timer this time for 2 minutes per side. We're going to flip these and go 2 more minutes. They're looking really delicious. We're adding our onion and garlic at this point. Boy, it smells so good, y'all. I'm going to turn it up just a hair because those onions are cooling it down just a hair. Our timers went off, so now we're going to check the thickest part of the chop again. Let's see where we're at. 150. We're going to flip it. We're going to leave them in there about 30 more seconds or so. I'm going to turn them up just a little bit. Those onions are almost perfect, y'all. Added them about the right time. So you want to get them in there about 3 minutes before you take your chops out. Now the temperature's going to raise just a little bit after you sit them on their platter. And they do need to sit for a minute. I'm going to take the smaller one out first. Looks good. Here comes the big one. Got it nice and brown. I turned it up. I wanted to turn it up just a little bit to get my chops a little bit brown. And it browned my onions, but they're not burnt. They're just going to taste good. Okay? So now we're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of sage. And this is ground sage, which is my favorite way to use it. We're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. 1/2 teaspoon of salt, which is 2 of these. 1/4 cup of flour. You're going to put in some salted butter. And it's going to make a delicious gravy. And then we're going to add 2 cups of whole milk or 2% milk, whatever you got. And then once you start smelling that flour browning, or you can tell it's browning by the color changing, you can add your milk. All right, that looks good. Let's add our milk. And you're just going to let it get hot. And once it starts bubbling up, getting hot, it should get thick from the flour. Now you can use a self-rising flour or a plain flour. Either one will work. Now you can see you got a nice, delicious gravy with onion and sage and garlic. Ooh, it's going to be good. All right, we're going to plate us a chop, cut into it, and show you how good it looks. Now, a father or your dad or daddy, whatever you call them, granddaddy, would be so happy to get this for Father's Day. Now that's some good Southern cooking, y'all. Now, you just gotta watch Mama's Meatloaf. You're gonna bake this at 375 degrees for 40 minutes. It just says mix all the ingredients together and put it in a loaf pan. And that's pretty much what you do. All right, so there's our beef. One tip I'm going to give you about the ground beef that I haven't given you is that when you mix up meatballs or you mix up meatloaf, you don't need to get your meat out until you got all your other ingredients ready, because when it gets warm, it gets real mushy, okay? And you don't want that. You want your beef to be nice and cold. We're going to put in our Lipton onion soup mix, 2 eggs, my roasted garlic powder, salt and pepper. That's a 1/2 sleeve of crackers, a few shakes of Worcestershire sauce. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, if you've got a mixer, you can use a mixer. I just don't want to fool with cleaning one, and I just always just mix up my meatloaf with my hands. All right, we're going to mix this up. The best way to do it is really with your hands. Get that egg mixed in there and all those crackers and spices. And this really is the best way to do it, in my opinion. So if you do use a mixer, don't over mix it. Don't beat the hound out of it, or it'll get mushy too. Just do a good mix until you think it's pretty much incorporated in there, because you don't want just one part of the meatloaf to have all of the onion soup mix in it or all of the roasted garlic powder in it. So then I also have a meatloaf pan, and it keeps the meat up off the bottom. That way you don't have to pour your grease out before you put your topping on. You can just lift your whole meatloaf out of this pan. It is amazing. If you don't have one of these, I do recommend for real that you go on our website, go to Shop Kitchen, choose the cookware section, and it's a great way to shop, and I recommend that you go through there. I am making this special for my husband because I'm going to tell you this. Chris loves meatloaf. So we're going to slide this into our oven, 375, 40 minutes. This is super simple. You're going to use 3/4 cups of ketchup. You're going to use 3 tablespoons of brown sugar and a 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder. And that onion powder does make a difference. It's not salt, it's powder, okay? Of course, the ketchup is already a little sweet, but you put that brown sugar in there and that onion powder, and boy, does it really step up the flavor of the ketchup. Time to put our topping on here. And you can tell you could have made the meatloaf with 2 pounds of beef and had plenty of room in this. Now we're going to cook it 10 more minutes. Our meatloaf is done, and this was an 85, I don't know if I told y'all, but it was 85.15, I believe is what it was, beef. And what's cool about this, you're going to see the oil be down in the bottom, and it's really easy to serve it. You just pick this up. You can see the oil in the bottom. Just slide it out on your serving plate. We're going to make you some Swiss steak. Boy, I remember Mama making Swiss steak, and it was always so tender and juicy. And most of the time, she did slide hers in the oven. But today, we're going to make it on top of the stove in a brazier. But if you've got a crock pot or a Dutch oven, you could use those as well. But it needs to be something that's closed up, and it's going to cook slow for a couple of hours. We are chopping up a little bit of bell pepper, and I thought I'd throw some of this bell pepper in it. We're getting it out of the garden, and it needs to be used. So we grew this bell pepper. All right, I wanted some little ones for flavor, and I'm also going to put in some larger pieces. And now we're going to chop up this onion. All right, we got some nice, pretty round steak. These are nice and about close to a 1/2 inch thick. So what you're going to do is place a couple of steaks out on your board, and you're going to do them all this way. You're going to salt and pepper them, flour them, and beat them. So I'm salting, and then I'm going to pepper. Okay, for the beef, Chris has already beat 2 of them, so the counter's kind of messy because it's a lot of work on my arm. So I was just going to do one for you guys. So you're going to take your steak and put it on your cutting board. We're going to salt and pepper it good. And then after I salt and pepper it, I'm going to trim the fat off the edges. If you don't, it's really hard for the beef to actually get tenderized because it wants to hold its shape around where the fat is. So I'm going to go ahead and salt and pepper this side. And then I'm going to trim it, put a little flour on it, and we're going to start beating it. This is pretty tough, I can tell you right now, because this is a good knife. It's a pretty tough piece of meat, but that's what you get with a round steak, okay? And you're going to just lightly dredge it with flour. Or just, you can either lightly dredge it or just let it lay in some flour lightly. Then you're going to beat it with the mallet. Okay. This is our mallet, and I'm just going to beat the hound out of it. And I'm not going to show you the whole process because it takes a few minutes. So you can just watch for a minute. And some of you, your mom might have let you do this part and it was fun to you as kids. But remember that when you do this, you really should have your meat at room temperature so that when you start beating it with the mallet, it doesn't take all day to get it tenderized. So what you want is for it to lose its shape and start falling down and breaking down, and you can tell the difference and how it looks now compared to what it looked before I started. Now we're going to put our meat right here on this. Should I half it and make them smaller pieces?
That's up to you. Whatever you
think I will. And I'm going to cut these in half, y'all. Now, if you're in an area where you can get tenderized steak at the store, at your butcher or in the store that you shop at, then especially if you're, have a hard time or you got an arm like I do that has lymphedema or something like that, you are way better off getting a tenderized, steak. Cube steak is what we call it here. If you can't, then this is the old-fashioned way of doing it. And some people can't get cube steak, so I thought we'd do it this way today, because this is original like everybody used to have to do it, even here where we live in the United States. Right now we're just putting a good bit of flour on it so that when we brown it in the skillet, it'll have some flour on it. And then later that will make a nice rendered gravy. We're going to cook this a couple of hours. I'm just going to use a little corn oil. Now this is a brazier. It's got a lid that seals this meat when it starts to cook. If you don't have to have a brazier. You can use a Dutch oven. You could actually use the crock pot, or you can just use a baking dish and put foil over it really tight. Just something that's going to keep that moisture in is what your goal is. Mama always cooked hers in the stove, just in a baking dish with some foil over it. But she didn't have a brazier like this. We're going to use our brazier today. So you're just going to want to brown this really good. And then we're going to take it out once it's brown. And saute our onion and bell pepper that we cut up. Right. These are the ingredients we're going to be using. I got some beef stock. I've got some roasted garlic powder, some onion powder, paprika, Worcestershire sauce, Worcestershire, what I call it, and some diced tomatoes. And I'm using a couple of cups of the stock, and then I'm also going to use my favorite steak seasoning. You can use any you want, but mine is Weber Steak and Shop. We're going to flip this over and let it continue to brown on both sides. We're going to take this meat out, put it right here on this tray, and throw our onion and pepper in here. Now, I'm going to slice up some garlic, but I don't want it to go in here with my onion and pepper. If you let garlic get too hot, you can burn it and make it bitter, so I don't want to do that. So now we're just going to let these start cooking some. Looking good. We're going to make some green peas. Now you can steam these in the bag, but we're going to put them on the stove in some stock. We're using some stock in our Swiss steak. So what I'm going to do is use some of it in these green peas, and I will let these simmer and cook on the stovetop while our steak is cooking. I'll just have them down on a really low temperature. I'm going to add just a little bit of salt to it. Really want to put any pepper in there. And I'm going to put just enough water to cover them. So it was mostly stock. And I'm going to put it back here on the stack eye and let it start simmering for supper tonight. Good. I'm going to bring it to a boil, and then I'll turn it all the way down and simmer it. Now we're going to put our meat back in our braiser. I'm kind of scooting the veggies over so that I get the meat on the actual bottom of the pot. Pour the juices in there with it. Now we're going to put in our spices. I'm just going to use some steak and chop, about a teaspoon. I'm just going to sprinkle paprika in it good. Onion powder, I'm going to do the same thing. I know we've got onions in here, but I just love to cook with onion powder, garlic powder, Worcestershire, fresh garlic, and I just sliced it up. And now the next thing is tomatoes. And some wonderful beef stock. And I'm going to add this right in the middle where my meat is not. And let it just run all the way under and over to the sides. And really, you should have enough liquid in here to just cover the top of the meat. And that's about what we've got. Make sure your meat's all the way down in the bottom. And then in an hour, I'm going to flip it. So I'm going to cook it for an hour on low. Then I'm going to flip all the meat, make sure it's down in the bottom again, and cook it for another hour. I've got just a little bit of beef stock left after putting it in my peas. So why not just throw it in this steak? And that way I know it's good and covered then. I mean, there's just barely any in there, probably about a quarter cup or so. So you're going to want to get a good bit of liquid in there. I don't know what kind of pan you're going to have and how deep it is, but it's just according to what you're using. You could have it in the baking dish if there's just a couple of you. I mean, you can make a little Swiss steak in a small square baking dish and put some foil over it.
just use your judgment and just follow our directions. You don't have to use the same amount of spices because I didn't really give you an amount. Just sprinkle everything good. And we will see you when it's time to eat with some good cream potatoes, peas, and Swiss steak. Now, this is one meal that makes you hungry because it cooks for so long and the house smells up and you just get so hungry for it. So by the time it gets ready, you're going to be hungry for it. And I've tasted it and it's delicious. So what we're going to do is put us some potatoes on our plate. So you really need to have some cream potatoes. And another thing that's really pretty is peas with this. And boy, they're good too. After cooking in that broth that we put them in. Now we're going to get us a piece of steak. See which one I want to get to go on my plate. Eeny, miny, mo. This one's a pretty shape. I'll get it. And then some people like to put the gravy, of course, on their potatoes, and you can. So I'm going to dip just a little bit of gravy out on my potatoes. Put a little extra gravy on. Boy, that looks pretty, don't it? And delicious. All right, it should be really fork tender, so we shouldn't need a knife. We're going to see how it turned out. Yeah, just like Mama's. Nice and tender. Gotta get us a little bite of potato to go with it. You know what? You really should buy the meat and pound it because it has a different texture than cube steak. It's more like steak. It is so good, y'all. Woo, this is a good supper. I hope you've enjoyed watching Colored Valley Cooks. Yummy. Where we cook like Mama did. Bye, y'all. Love ya.